Hey guys, thanks again for joining us for our 10-day video series on the top 10 ways to love your spouse. Today we're going to kick off with attention. And I want to go all the way back to the book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis, God created the heavens and the earth. He created day 1 and he said it was good. He created day 2 and he said it was good. And he developed this cadence. Day 1, it was good. Day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, it was good. And then day 6, he created man and he broke his cadence. And in Genesis 2:18, he said this, "The Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." And we know from there that what God did is he did something supernatural. He put Adam to sleep and he took a part of his body and he fashioned and formed Eve. And in response to that, we have the first marriage in the Bible. In Genesis 2:24, "For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame." A beautiful picture. Marriage in the garden, naked in the Garden of Eden. It's a great scene. What we can learn from this, though, is one of God's purposes for marriage. Remember, when God created Adam alone, he said it wasn't good. And one of God's solutions for Adam's aloneness was a person. And it was the person of Eve. And it was the institution of marriage. Marriage is one of God's solutions for Adam's aloneness problem. And what we can take from that is we know that marriage is designed to remove aloneness. And so what we want to talk about today is one of the keys to remove aloneness in the institution of marriage. This is important, by the way, not just for marriage, but even in our society today. I believe that we're experiencing an epidemic of aloneness in today's world for a lot of different reasons. Most recently, because of the pandemic that we're in. But then also as we even look at the impact of social media on our relationships. And I believe social media is so dangerous. There's some benefits, of course, but it's so dangerous because it gives us the illusion of togetherness. It allows us to experience this facade of relationship. And there is some relationship there. But what I would suggest is not the way that God designed. God designed us to do life together in the context of relationships. And one of his most significant relationships is the relationship of marriage. And so again, we see marriage as this institution to remove Adam's aloneness. And related back to the top 10 ways to love your spouse, one of the keys to doing this in the relationship of marriage is showing your spouse or giving your spouse attention. And we're talking about spending time with each other. And we're talking about spending quality time together, quantity time together, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So we're all experiencing this, to some degree, this epidemic of aloneness. And we see again that marriage is one of God's solutions for this aloneness. But here's the unfortunate reality, is that even in the relationship of marriage, we know firsthand that there are husbands and wives in an institution that God created to remove aloneness where they're still experiencing loneliness. And that's a sad thing. The relationship that God created to remove this aloneness, a husband and wife at times, for a lot of different reasons, are lonely. And so we want to talk to you about what it looks like to fight that loneliness or this aloneness problem in the relationship of marriage. Listen to this quote by Robin Williams. He said this. He said, "I used to think that the worst thing in life was to end up alone." But he said, actually, the worst thing in life is not to end up alone, but it's ending up with people who make you feel alone. And isn't that profound? And unfortunately, we know the end of Robin Williams' story. It ended in suicide. And what's so sad to me is that there are marriages existing today that are together, but they still feel alone.
Yeah, so pretty immediately into our marriage, Hans and I took jobs where we were working opposite schedules. And so I was working at a daycare from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. so that I could be with our newborn daughter. And he was working shift work at a computer company, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. so that we could have benefits. And so imagine I'm waking up at 7 a.m. or before 7 a.m. to be at work at 7 a.m. And obviously Hans is probably not awake yet because he's had a late night. And then when he comes home at night at 11 p.m. or 11:30, I'm in bed because I've got an early morning. So sadly, there were days where we just didn't see each other at all. And you want to talk about feeling alone in a marriage? We really believe that that scenario played a huge role in us being bitterly separated and pursuing a divorce almost 2 years into our marriage.
Yeah. I mean, the reason that we're in an epidemic of aloneness is because I believe we're struggling with another epidemic of busyness. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're taking our kids to soccer practice, dance recitals, piano recitals, church, house church, Sunday school, all of these different things. We're doing a lot of good things, but at the expense of maybe the best thing. And that's prioritizing our marriages and prioritizing our family. I mean, I remember not too long ago, probably 10 years ago or so, I have a personal board of directors that helps me make decisions for my ministry and then also for my life. And I was feeling overwhelmed and I went to them and I said, look, what do I do? And they said, go through this exercise. We want you to list down every single activity, every single responsibility that you have, and we want you to write it down in order of priority. I said, okay, that's easy enough. I know what my responsibilities are. I'm a list guy. I know what that looks like. But then they said, I want you to associate or designate the amount of time it takes on a daily basis to fulfill those same responsibilities. That was the eye-opener for me, because at the end of that exercise in my little pretty Excel spreadsheet with my list on the left and my hours on the right, my total was 37.5 hours a day. Guys, that's not possible. That was a wake-up call for me. Like we were falling prey to this epidemic of busyness. Our lives were full of good things, but we were sacrificing some of the best things. So I had to pare things down. And so one of the keys to giving each other attention is to realize some of the things that are attacking the attention in your relationship.
Yeah, let me read us the definition of attention. Conveying appropriate interest, concern, or care. Taking thought of another. Entering into another's world. And we want to start with attention because we think that this need is so significant in marriage. In fact, we think of attention as kind of the entry gate to all of the other needs that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Without attention, it's impossible to meet the other needs. So we're going to start with attention because it is the entry gate. We have to know each other. We have to know our spouse. We need to know them intimately. We need to know them daily. I need to know what is giving Hans joy, what is making him excited, what is he dreaming about. I want to know what he's sad about, what he's fearful about, what's causing any kind of anxiety or anger. I need to know these things. And the only way that I'm going to know these things, that I'm going to enter in and be able to give attention to my husband, is I've got to enter into his world. And so the way that we can give attention to our spouse is we have to enter into their world. And what this takes for me is if I'm going to enter into Hans's world, if you're going to enter into your spouse's world, I have to leave my own. Like I have to step out of my world and my agenda so that I can be purposeful and intentional about entering into his. If we're honest, this can be difficult to do. I mean, we're selfish. I'm selfish. At the end of the day, sometimes when he comes home from work, we've both worked hard. I've cooked dinner. We've sat down. We've engaged with our children. We've talked to them. We've been very purposeful and intentional about engaging with them. We clean the kitchen. We get everybody off to bed. Sometimes the last thing I really want to do, if I'm honest, is connect. I want to sit and I want to watch Netflix and I want to be quiet. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's necessarily wrong. I'm just saying that that can never take the place of making sure that we're giving the appropriate attention to our marriage and to our spouse. I can remember very early on in our marriage when I started homeschooling. I homeschooled our 6 kids for 17 years, and you can imagine that homeschooling 6 kids for 17 years can be difficult. There were a lot of hard seasons that were in there, and in particular, there was the season when I had a newborn that I was nursing that was keeping me up at night, a toddler that I was potty training, a preschooler that I was chasing, and then these school-age kids that I was supposed to be educating. And so there were some long days. There were some hard days. And Hans would walk in the door after a long, busy day of counseling, of listening to people all day long, to come in and need to listen to me. Because I've been with these little people all day. And I needed some adult conversation. And sometimes my conversation wasn't pleasant because I wanted to unload on him every reason that this was impossible or hard. And I will tell you that him giving himself to me in that way, walking in, and even though I know that he was exhausted some days, just putting on that husband hat to ask me, Star, what was your day like? How was it? Tell me, I really care. I want to know. Showing that care and concern, entering into my world, that was the key to me surviving some of those hard days. And so if we're not doing this, if we're not meeting this need for attention with our spouse, if we're not stepping into their world, leaving our own world, we're going to have extreme loneliness in our marriage. If you're not doing this in your marriage, you're neglecting your spouse. If you're just indifferent to your spouse, you're neglecting them. And so we need to make sure that our marriages are the least lonely place on the planet, because marriage is the place, we just read it, that God intended for us to experience oneness, to not feel alone. And so if your marriage is a place where you feel alone, that's a dangerous place to be. And I would say that your first step is making sure that you are doing everything in your power to meet this need for attention with your spouse.
Totally agree. And so as we talk about what this looks like in the application of marriage, again, we have to understand kind of the enemies of attention. And we said that one of the enemies of attention is busyness. I believe another enemy of attention in marriage is social media. Surely those aren't the only ones, but those are two of the biggest ones that we see. We have to recognize those and resist the drift in the direction of those two enemies of attention. And make no mistake, you will, because of culture and because of the sin inside of you, drift in the direction of busyness to fill our time and our attention with other things other than our marriage. And we will drift in the direction of experiencing these counterfeit relationships on social media. That's how we're bent. We're going to drift in that direction unless we're purposeful to resist that drift and to pursue real, authentic, biblical attention. And guys, the good news is this is not rocket science. And yet, couple after couple that I meet with as I'm fixing to share some of these things to counter some of these enemies, couples just aren't doing them. So here's what I want you to think through. I want you to think through the lens of, for each of these top 10 ways to love, starting with attention, what can I do on a daily basis to meet this need for my spouse? What can I do on a weekly basis to meet this need for my spouse? And what can I do on a monthly and quarterly basis? So again, what can I do every day, every week, every month, every quarter, and then every year? And again, as we talked about in the first video, these things don't have to be big things. Success in marriage is a sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. And so marriages aren't built or destroyed in a day. It takes a lifetime of growth. And so start small. And we want to suggest on a daily basis to carve out a couple minutes a day that are dedicated to just checking in with your spouse. Maybe that's first thing in the morning, having a cup of coffee. For Star and I, sometimes as I'm getting out the door and getting ready, I'll take 5 minutes just to connect. Just her and I, no phones, no anything before I'm getting out the door in my direction and she's getting out the door in her direction. Throughout the day, we're sending texts to each other, just checking in on each other. Over lunch, hey, how's your day going? Anything I can pray for you for? Don't underestimate the impact of those small, seemingly insignificant moments in the everyday moments of marriage. Send a text at the end of the day. I know the kids are animals. We just got a dog. Are nipping at your feet, but set them aside so you can prioritize the most important relationship of marriage. Again, have a cup of coffee, sit on the back porch, connect. How was your day? We're not talking 30 minutes. I'm talking 5. I know you're busy. I'm not saying to get rid of all your activities. We have to live, but we have to prioritize one of the most important activities, and that's prioritizing the relationship with our spouse. So that's what we can do on a daily basis. On a weekly basis, one of the most non-spiritual, if you will, in one sense, advice that people gave us 20 years ago was to implement a date night every single week. Guys, I can't tell you how much this has paid off for us over the past 25, 26, 27 years. It is on every Thursday night. It's on the calendar, on my calendar, 6:30 to 9:30, I'm out with my wife. Our kids know it. Our friends know it. My clients know it. And I got to tell you, sometimes Monday afternoon, I'm already looking forward to spending that date night with my wife. Because here's what I know, and I know what she knows also. It's a time that we can look forward to every single week where we can take our mom hat off and our dad hat off my ministry hat off and her taxi service hat off and all the different hats that we have. You've got a lot. But we have to prioritize time on a weekly basis to put on our marriage hat, the husband hat and the wife hat. We've got to do it. If our marriages are going to succeed, we have to carve out time to spend together daily in the everyday small moments, and then on date night, several hours together where you can catch up and set everything else aside and connect with each other. And so look, guys, hopefully you understand the importance of meeting your spouse's need for attention. And hopefully you have a few things that you can start to put into practice right away. We addressed this first because we believe, as Star said, this is the entry gate. It's the door to get into meeting all the rest of your spouse's needs. If you miss this, you're not going to be able to get anything else right, because all the rest of the top 10 ways to love require time together. And look, time together is not going to heal your marriage in and of itself, but time is absolutely required to heal your marriage. And I hope you see the difference. So, hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed today's video. We look forward to talking to you about acceptance tomorrow.